Well, hey everybody, it's great to see you today. Welcome to Living Power, your online Bible study where we are walking through the Bible in a year. My name is Shannon Mullins, and if you were just joining us, I want to welcome you to the class and tell you how excited we are that you are here. Thank you so much for telling your friends about this class. We continue to grow in numbers every day. It is March 9th, and it is going to be spring before you know it, and I am so excited because I love spring. I can't wait for the warm weather to come back and we can put on our flip-flops and wear our sandals and our shorts, and I actually prefer capris myself. But anyway, I just love going to the beach, and I'm so excited about it becoming warmer weather. I don't know about you. Do you have spring fever yet? But I sure do. So today is March 9th. The lesson is entitled A Tribute of Gold. And that was at the very end of our reading. And it was amazing to me to see at the very end of the reading today. That was the nugget for the reading that just struck me as amazing. And I'm going to share it with you today, and I think you will find it amazing too. The reading is really divided into two parts. The vow, and I'm going to talk to you today about the vow and kind of teach you a little bit about what the vow is, so that when you read about vows, because we're going to read about them going forward, people will continue to give vows, and we want to understand what that's all about. So when we read about that, we need to kind of understand what that is. And then the second part would be this war with the Midianites, and it's a holy war for sure, and we're going to look at the war and to see what God thinks about it, what the people do, and just the whole outcome of that. Let's start with the vow. And in Numbers 30, we see the laws concerning vows. Now, you might have read this and thought, this is all well and good, but what exactly is a vow? Why would I ever want to give a vow to the Lord? Why did these people do that? Well, here is a possible explanation for that. A vow was an ancient practice that was allowed by the law. It was where people declared their intention to do things like offer additional sacrifices, a gift on the altar, to abstain from something. Maybe they were going to fast and they wanted to go into a period of voluntary fasting. Maybe they wanted to do something that honored the Lord, honored God in some way. It was always over and above what was required in the law, because the sacrifices and the things that were required in the law were non-negotiables. This was something, a vow was something that you wanted to do over and above those required things, and it was voluntary. A couple of points to note about the vows. First, that it had to be expressed in words, had to be said out loud. You couldn't just think it. Oh, I think I want to fast for the next 2 weeks in honor of the Lord. That didn't count. You had to actually speak it. Number 2, it was voluntary, something that you wanted to do. But let's say you vowed to fast for 2 weeks, and well, you wouldn't fast for 2 weeks. Maybe, yeah, you would. You might. Maybe a daytime fast. And then at the end of that 1 week, you went, phew, this is for the birds. I can't do this anymore. Boy, do I want that piece of chocolate cake. You couldn't do that. You couldn't go back on a vow. Once you proclaimed the vow, it was a duty. And if you didn't do it, if you didn't fulfill it and complete it, it was a sign of unfaithfulness to God. So it was pretty serious. You had to take your vows very seriously. Now, there was protection built into the vows, and this was something I liked about the reading today. How easy it is for us today to make a hasty statement. How easy it must have been for them to make a hasty vow. So there was some protection for the people that might find themselves in this particular place. Sometimes you might vow something that was not good for you, or sometimes you might vow something out of zeal and excitement and enthusiasm for the Lord that just wasn't in your power to do. And if that was the case, your guardian had the right and authority to kind of void this vow that you had made. Now, there was a couple of stipulations around the voiding of a vow that you made. Your parents, so the parent of a child, could void a vow that a child made if they determined that it was hasty. A husband, to protect their wife, could void a vow that the wife had made in haste. It must have been voided that day. Did you notice it couldn't, they couldn't go into it for a week or at a time and then void it out. No, it had to be done that day. And if they didn't say anything, if they didn't object, the parents or the husband didn't object within that day, their silence was, in essence, their approval. So they were approving of this vow. And then after that day, it was in stone. It was something that had to be fulfilled. Now, I did do a little bit of study in some other commentaries, and it was telling me that Jewish writers have said that even though in the Bible here it says that a female child could be protected by their father, it was also true this ability to void the vow was extended to boys, to boy children as well. So it was male and female children. Both boys and girls were protected there by their guardians, their parents. And the boys at age 13 could engage in a vow, and girls at age 12 could engage in a vow. So I thought that was pretty interesting, the ages there. Now, the second thing we want to talk about from our reading is this war with the Midianites. And this is one of many wars that we're going to be reading about, and we'll continue to be talking about them and the fact that they were holy wars. This was a holy war, no doubt. The Midianites were descendants of Abraham and Keturah, which was his second wife. They lived on the east coast of the Dead Sea, and what did they do to deserve this punishment? They led the Israelites into sin, into idolatry, in worshiping this god called Chemosh, and we read about that earlier this week. God was avenging the children of Israel, and Moses was avenging the honor of the Lord, the dishonor that had been brought on him. That is what constitutes a holy war. There were holy instruments in this. There were holy instruments in this war. The trumpets was considered a holy instrument, and the ark would not have been carried into battle until later. So when we see that the priests went ahead, they were blowing the trumpets and they were leading the army. Isn't that just a beautiful picture of whenever we go into battle, we must sound the trumpets, and the high priest leads the army into battle. And that's just the appropriate way to go to war. The fight. 12,000 Israelites fought in this war. 5 of their kings, the Midianite kings, died. It was certainly a success. Zer was one of the Midianite kings. He was the father of that woman, Cosbi, who we talked about earlier this week, that was killed with a spear. Her dad, the king, one of the kings, was Zer, and he died. In Joshua 13:21, you've got to go look this up yourself. I couldn't believe it. I still can barely believe it. But it says that all the kings were killed by Moses. Moses is at his deathbed. He's already been told that he's going to die. A successor, Joshua, has been named to take over, leading the people. And yet Moses is engaged in this holy war, and he's the one that kills the kings. That is amazing to me. It is just amazing to me when God's Spirit fills a person. He equips them to do whatever it is that He is calling them to do. And that is true of you and me today. The people killed all the men and brought the women and the children before Moses and the Lord. What was the response? What was God's response? He was like, how could you let the women live? They were the ones that led my people into this sin. They have got to go. They cannot be spared. Their life cannot be spared. And this is not really hard to understand because these were people who were not God's people. They did not have God in their heart. And we know from the book of Romans, the wages of sin is death. This is justice. This is a just decision. So the women and the boys were killed, everyone except the young maidens. The young maidens were spared. And we learned that there were 32,000 young maidens that were spared and that were given as part of the plunder. Now, did you read about the plunder, the spoils of war? This was so interesting. Before I tell you about that, before I tell you about the plunder, there is one more person that I wanted to mention to you that was killed today. Did you notice in Numbers 24:25, who we have studied him earlier? Do you remember Balaam, the one that talked with the donkey, the one that blessed Israel 4 times, but that was paid with money to curse Israel, the one who had in his heart the desire, the love for money, that he actually gave Balak this idea to lead the Israelites into idolatry and that would be their downfall. This Balaam was killed in this battle, and this was his fate. This was his demise. In Numbers 24:25, it says, he returned home, but he must have come back to get his reward, because here he is being killed on the scene in this battle. His heart had not turned, and his heart was desiring and lusting after this reward, and it's what ended up killing him, and he died in the battle. So that is the fate of Balaam. Now, there's a miracle, a wonderful miracle in the reading today, and it's the scripture that I pulled out for you in Numbers 31:48. Is it 48? Yeah, 48 to 49. After the battle was over, remember 12,000 Israelite men went into this battle. They were very successful in killing all the men, killing all the women and the boys. They have all of this plunder, and they come before Moses. And the generals and the captains say something that is true, that is amazing. Do you remember what it was? It says, they said, not one Israelite was killed. What they say is, we have accounted for all the men that went into the battle, and not one of them is missing. They are all alive. This is the providence of God, the sovereignty of God. This is Him working. This is Him fighting for His people. Not one of His people was lost. This is the good shepherd caring for his sheep. Not one of the Israelites lost their life in this battle. That was amazing. Now, back to the plunder. I know you've been waiting for this patiently. We talked about the 32,000 maidens. There was also cattle, donkey, sheep, and goats. And God says how to divide this. I've given you a little chart in case you're interested to see. Some of it was given to the priests, some of it was given to the Levites, some of it was given to all the people, the congregation, and some of it was given to the, what was the other part? The men in the battle. Yeah, the men that were fighting. Now, at the very end, I want you to notice the best part of the whole reading, and I've saved it for last. I hope you haven't turned off the video. I hope you're still with me. The generals and the captains, not all of the men fighting, but the generals and the captains, voluntarily gave an offering, gave a gift, some of their plunder to the Lord. Did you notice? It wasn't the cattle, it wasn't the maidens, it was the gold. Gold was part of the plunder, and it came in the form of jewels and jewelry and all kinds of things. 420 pounds of gold the captains gave voluntarily to the Lord. And in one of the commentaries it says it amounted to over $300,000. They voluntarily gave because their hearts were such that they were so thankful that the Lord had given them this victory. They acknowledged that it was the Lord and that the Lord had helped them to spare the lives of their men, that not one was lost. If you were in that situation, you'd just been in a battle, you were celebrating the victory, you had all this spoil and plunder, would you have wanted to keep it for yourself? Or would you have been so thankful and gracious and grateful to the Lord that you wanted to give him this gift? Well, this is what they did. I wonder if we had been in that situation, what we would do. What do we do today? We have so much gold in blessings and prosperity in our own life. Next Sunday at church, the next opportunity you have to give, what will you give of your heart? Will you give gratefully? Will you give graciously back to the Lord for all that he has given? Well, I hope this lesson has been a blessing to you today. I sure have enjoyed being with you. I can't wait to see you again, and I want to wish you shalom until we meet next time. See you then.